You planted your seeds, waited patiently with hope in your heart, and nothing came up. That crushing disappointment happens to almost every gardener at some point, and the frustration cuts steep. After more than 3 decades of starting thousands of seeds indoors and out, I can tell you with complete confidence that the problem is almost always one of these 14 specific mistakes. Today we are walking through every single one so you can diagnose exactly what went wrong and fix it for good. Stay until the end, because mistake number 13 catches more gardeners completely off guard than you'd ever expect. And the bonus tip might just revolutionize how you approach seed starting forever. The first fatal mistake, and honestly the most common one I see year after year, is planting seeds too deep. This single error has ruined more beginner gardens than almost anything else. Here's what actually happens: every seed contains a tiny embryo with a very limited energy reserve. That energy has to push the seedling upward through the soil until it reaches light and can begin photosynthesis. Bury a seed too deeply and it simply runs out of fuel before it ever breaks the surface. Small seeds like lettuce, carrots, celery, petunias, and snapdragons are especially vulnerable because they start with almost no stored energy. My golden rule after 30 years: plant at a depth of roughly 2 to 3 times the seed's own diameter. For tiny seeds, that often means barely covering them or simply pressing them gently onto the moist soil surface. If your seed packet says surface sow, take that instruction seriously. Those seeds usually need light to trigger germination. Covering them even lightly is basically guaranteeing failure. In my experience, respecting this one detail alone can boost your success rate dramatically. The second mistake that quietly devastates so many seed starting efforts is ignoring soil temperature. Most gardeners obsess over air temperature. But your seeds don't care what the porch thermometer reads, they care about the temperature of the soil they're sitting in. Every species has its own ideal germination window. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, melons, and squash all demand warm soil, typically 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 to 29 degrees Celsius. Plant them in 50 degrees Fahrenheit soil and they'll just sit there, slowly rotting instead of sprouting. I've watched this happen to eager gardeners in zones 3 through 6 every single spring. On the flip side, soil hotter than 95 degrees Fahrenheit can actually kill the embryo. The fix is simple but non-negotiable: buy an inexpensive soil thermometer and actually use it. For warm season crops started indoors, a heat mat has been one of the best investments I've ever made. Match your soil temperature to what the seeds truly need and you eliminate one of the most misunderstood variables in the entire germination process. The third fatal mistake targets the most attentive, caring gardeners, and that is overwatering. You want your seeds to succeed so badly that you keep the soil moist, then a little more moist, then constantly wet. Suddenly nothing germinates. Here's the science behind it: seeds need moisture to trigger germination, but they also need oxygen. When the soil becomes waterlogged, water fills every air pocket and literally suffocates the seed. Within 48 hours, fungal pathogens move in and rot sets in. Beans, peas, sunflowers, zucchini, and corn are especially vulnerable because their larger seeds sit in the soil longer and absorb more water. Gardeners in humid zones 7 through 10 struggle with this the most because the environment already fights quick drying. After decades of teaching beginners, my advice is clear: aim for consistent moisture, never saturation. Your starting mix should feel like a wrung-out sponge, damp throughout but never dripping. If you squeeze a handful and water runs out, it's too wet. Good drainage is essential, so containers must have holes and outdoor beds need to drain freely. When in doubt, Let the surface dry slightly between waterings rather than adding more. Mastering this balance alone has saved more of my seed trays than any other single technique. The fourth mistake catches even experienced gardeners completely off guard: using old or non-viable seeds. You do everything right, perfect depth, ideal temperature, careful watering, and still nothing emerges. The hard truth is those seeds were dead before you ever put them in the soil. Seed viability drops dramatically over time, and the rate varies wildly by species. Onion, parsnip, leek, parsley, and spinach seeds are notorious for short shelf lives, often losing significant germination rates after just 1 to 2 years. Meanwhile, tomato and cucumber seeds can remain viable for 5 years or more under good conditions. The frustrating part? There's no visual difference between a viable seed and a dead one. They look identical. This leads gardeners down endless rabbit holes troubleshooting their technique when the seeds were the real culprit. Before planting older seeds, run my simple germination test. Place 10 seeds on a damp paper towel. Seal it in a plastic bag, and keep it warm for the expected period. Count how many sprout. If only 3 out of 10 germinate, you know to plant heavily or buy fresh seeds. This one test has saved entire growing seasons for me and countless students. The fifth fatal mistake is the opposite of overwatering but equally destructive: inconsistent moisture or underwatering. Seeds require continuous moisture during germination because the process is irreversible once it starts. When a seed absorbs water, it triggers a cascade of chemical reactions that wake up the embryo. If the seed dries out after this begins, the embryo dies. There is no restarting. Carrots, parsley, celery, and parsnips are the biggest victims here because they can take 14 to 21 days to germinate. That's 3 long weeks where the soil must stay consistently moist, and most gardeners lose patience. Gardeners in arid zones 7 through 10 face the greatest challenge because low humidity and wind dry out surfaces rapidly. The solution isn't to water more heavily but more frequently and lightly. Use humidity domes or plastic wrap on trays until germination. For direct sown seeds, a light layer of vermiculite or fine compost helps retain surface moisture. Check your seed starting area at least twice daily during the germination window. Once you truly understand that a single dry period can be fatal, you'll never approach watering the same way again. The sixth mistake is one that outdoor direct sowers encounter constantly: compacted or crusted soil. You plant at the perfect depth, water carefully, and wait, but the soil surface bakes in the sun and forms a hard crust, or heavy clay compacts into something like concrete. Either way, your tender seedlings are trapped underground. Young sprouts have almost no physical strength. They rely on loose soil to push through. When they hit that immovable barrier, they exhaust their energy reserves and die before ever seeing daylight. Carrots, lettuce, beans, and beets are lost this way more often than most gardeners realize. Clay-heavy regions see it constantly, but any bed can crust over after heavy rain followed by hot sun. In my 30-plus years, prevention has always been far easier than correction. Amend heavy soils generously with compost before planting. After sowing, cover seeds with a light layer of seed starting mix or vermiculite instead of packing native soil back on top. If crusting starts to form, gently break it up with a hand rake just before seedlings are due to emerge. Sometimes germination failure isn't about the seed at all, it's about what's sitting on top of it. The seventh mistake involves something many gardeners never even consider: ignoring light requirements for germination. We tend to think seeds only need moisture and warmth, but some have a critical third requirement. Lettuce, petunia, and snapdragon seeds need light exposure to trigger germination. Cover them with even a thin layer of soil and they simply will not sprout. The light signal tells them they're near the surface where survival is possible. On the other hand, tomatoes, peppers, and onions often require darkness. Leaving them uncovered or using clear containers can actually inhibit germination. This information is usually right on the seed packet, yet it gets overlooked constantly. After decades of trial and error, I can tell you that matching light conditions to each seed's needs is one of the easiest and most effective fixes in all of seed starting. For light-requiring seeds, simply press them onto the moist surface without covering and mist gently. For dark-requiring ones, cover appropriately and use opaque tray covers until sprouts appear. The eighth mistake primarily affects those growing native plants, perennials, or fruit trees from seed, skipping cold stratification. Many seeds from temperate climates have built-in dormancy mechanisms that prevent germination until they've experienced winter. This is nature's clever way of stopping fall sprouts that would die in freezing weather. Lavender, echinacea, milkweed, most native wildflowers, and many fruit tree seeds all need this treatment. Without 30 to 90 days of cold, moist conditions, these seeds will sit in your soil indefinitely. Gardeners in zones 3 through 7 run into this every year. They plant, see nothing, and assume the seeds were bad. In reality, they were just waiting for winter that never came. The fix is straightforward but requires planning. Place seeds in a damp paper towel inside a sealed bag and refrigerate them for the recommended period, or direct sow in late fall and let nature handle it. Check your seed packets carefully. If stratification is needed and you skip it, no amount of perfect technique will make those seeds germinate. The ninth mistake has destroyed more seedlings than perhaps any other: damping off disease. One day you have healthy green seedlings, the next morning they've collapsed at the soil line with pinched, withered stems. This fungal nightmare, Pythium, Rhizoctonia, Fusarium, thrives in cool, humid, poorly ventilated conditions with wet soil. Brassicas, tomatoes, and peppers are especially vulnerable. Prevention is your only real defense. Always use sterile seed starting mix, clean containers with drainage. Provide gentle airflow from a small fan, and avoid overwatering. Bottom watering keeps the surface drier. If it hits, remove affected seedlings immediately. In my experience, good airflow and slightly drier surfaces have nearly eliminated damping off from my own setups. The 10th mistake stops germination before it even begins, failing to scarify hard-coated seeds. Morning glory, nasturtium, sweet pea, lupine, and moonflower have tough outer coats that water can't penetrate. You can plant them perfectly and they'll sit dormant for months. Scarify by gently nicking the coat with a nail clipper, opposite the eye, or rubbing lightly on sandpaper until you see a lighter layer. A 12 to 24 hour warm water soak can also help. Skip this step and you'll waste an entire season wondering why nothing happened. The 11th mistake happens every single year: planting at the wrong season. Cool season crops like lettuce, spinach, and peas planted in summer heat will bolt or fail. Warm season crops like tomatoes and peppers planted in cold soil simply rot. Learn your last and first frost dates, understand that soil temperature lags behind air temperature, and listen to local experienced gardeners. Timing is everything. The 12th mistake occurs long before you touch the soil: poor seed storage. Heat, humidity, and light are the enemies of viability. Never leave seeds in a hot garage, humid basement, or sunny windowsill. Store them cool, dark, and dry, ideally in a sealed jar with silica gel in the refrigerator. Older seeds should always get a germination test first. Bad storage has ruined more good intentions than I can count. The 13th mistake catches gardeners completely off guard, losing seeds to birds, rodents, and insects. You sow corn, beans, peas or sunflowers, water carefully and nothing comes up. The seeds were eaten within hours. Crows, mice, voles, and wireworms are the hidden thieves. Use row covers, bird netting, or start vulnerable crops indoors. Sometimes the problem isn't germination, it's predation. The 14th and final mistake, using treated, hybrid, or non-germinating seeds without understanding them. Hybrid seeds saved at home are often sterile or unpredictable. Bargain bin seeds may be old or treated. Always buy from reputable companies and choose open-pollinated or heirloom varieties when you want to save seeds. Know exactly what you're planting. And now the bonus tip that genuinely changed my seed starting success rate forever: pre-sprouting with the coffee filter method. Before planting any seed, especially older ones or tricky varieties, place them on a damp coffee filter. Fold it, seal in a plastic bag, and keep warm at 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Check daily. You'll see exactly which seeds send out root tips. Transplant only the sprouted ones into soil. This eliminates guesswork and guarantees every cell in your tray has a living plant. It takes 5 minutes and gives total confidence. Thanks for staying with me through all 14 mistakes. If this helped, drop a like, subscribe for more practical gardening advice, and check out my other videos on growing a better garden. Happy planting, may your seeds thrive this season.